the phoenix, a majestic, miraculous red golden bird, known for its flames and its ability to be reborn from its own ashes, a symbol of resilience, renewal, and rebirth. And for some of you, maybe also your favorite streamer. But where does the phoenix even come from? Was it chilling with Zeus and his family on the Olymp? Or did it witness the creation of the pyramids in Egypt? Or was it even casually born in Austria? Okay, the last one probably isn't related to the origins of the phoenix, but fact is, no one seems to really know which mythology this bird belongs to. Maybe we have been fooled all this time and Christianity just made the whole story up and pretended it is way older than it actually is. And with that, welcome. I am Lapu, and in this lecture we will take a closer look at the famous bird called the phoenix. And for that, we have to go back in time, to when the phoenix didn't even exist yet. Because you could say the phoenix was not the first of its kind. Long before any stories about a wondrous red golden bird were told, there was already a bird that was associated with rebirth. The ancient Egyptian god Bennu was a deity linked to the sun, creation, and rebirth. As a self-created being, it was said that Bennu played a role in the creation of the world. It was the Ba, the personality component of the soul of the sun god Ra, as well as having enabled the creative actions of Atum. In the primordial world called Noon, which was a watery abyss, it was flying over the water. Landed on a rock, a so-called Ben stone, a mound that arose from the primordial water, and upon which Atum settled, and issued a call that determined the nature of creation. It was also believed that it periodically renewed itself in the same way that it was thought that the sun did. Furthermore, its name means something like to rise in brilliance or to shine. Bennu is usually depicted as a large grey heron, with a true feathered crest, sometimes perched on a benben stone or in a willow tree. It also sometimes wears the Aleph crown, instead of the solar disk. The depiction with a willow tree and the Aleph crown originates from Bennu's association with rebirth, linking it to Osiris, and thus it was depicted with objects directly associated with the ruler of the underworld. But this is the important point. Bennu was only associated with rebirth, not with death. In fact, it was never mentioned that the bird ever died. It is a being who came into being by itself, as one of its titles describes it. It is the herald of cosmic beginnings, and despite it being part of the sun god Ra, it has nothing to do with fire, especially not self-immolation. The motive of self-renewal and the association with rebirth were there, but the exact nature of those aspects remains a mystery. So I think we can say that the primordial bird Bennu was in some way related to the phoenix. Perhaps you could think of it as a distant ancestor, or simply as a major inspiration for what would later mark the beginning of the phoenix story. After all, Bennu was known to play a role in creation. If we go on, we find the first mentions of a phoenix in Book 2 of Histoires by Herodotus. During a visit in Heliopolis, Herodotus listened to a story of a priest who told him about a very special bird. This priest described a phoenix that only appears every 500 years, when the old previous one died. It is similar in size to an eagle, which could mean many things honestly, but when I looked up Egyptian eagles, I came across the national bird of Egypt, the steppe eagle. These eagles have a body length of 62 to 81 centimeters and a wingspan of 165 to 214 centimeters. The females are typically a tiny bit larger though. This is just to give you a rough idea of what kind of bird we might be talking about, although that could be completely wrong and they actually might have meant a different eagle. But who knows? More importantly, this phoenix had a red and golden plumage and was strongly tied to the sun. In the story that Herodotus was told, this bird formed a ball, or an egg, of myrrh when their parent died, put their corpse inside it, and then carried it to the Temple of the Sun in Heliopolis. It isn't clear why it did this, or what it did with this egg in the Temple of the Sun, but considering that myrrh was seen as a defined substance, and was widely used for mummification and temple incenses, among other uses, it wouldn't be crazy to think of it as some sort of funeral rite. I do want to emphasize though that this is mainly my interpretation and there's no clear mention of the phoenix performing some sort of funeral rite, okay? Okay. Interestingly, Herodotus explicitly stated that he had never seen the bird and found this tale hard to believe, which is fine. I guess stories of Zeus impregnating a woman by turning into a golden shower, or a woman giving birth to a half-ox, half-human hybrid, also known as a minotaur, are way more believable, but if that is where Herodotus draws the line, then fine. To be fair, his histoires primarily covered the lives of prominent kings and famous battles based on what he could see and was told. So perhaps he was not interested in these kinds of reports, unlike you and me. Modern scholars tried to trace Herodotus' story back to its origins, and connected it to two strands, the Hesiodic longevity motive and an Egyptian love song in Papyrus Harris 500. The first one being earlier Greek poetry, which used the phoenix mainly as an extreme unit of time to establish the 500-year and multiple lifetimes idea. In Papyrus Harris 500, a female birdcatcher sang about birds from Punt carrying balls of myrrh in their talons to Egypt. Scholars argued this popular tradition was the secular root for Herodotus' myrrh egg narrative. The article Herodotus' Phoenix between Hesiod and Papyrus Harris 500 shows how the concept of Greek poetic obsessiveness with long lifespans and the Egyptian image of birds carrying myrrh may have merged into the specific Heliopolis story Herodotus was told by a priest. This is rarely mentioned, but the phoenix's funeral egg is likely not purely priestly dogma, but a fusion of popular song imagery and Greek literary motives. But all this was just the beginning of the phoenix. Over time, this myth transformed further through Greek and Roman authors. They added or emphasized ideas like the fire, the funeral pyre, and the ashes theme, which again was not part of Herodotus' description, but as I already said earlier, I do understand where this thought might have come from if you consider the usage of myrrh in Egypt. Furthermore, the phoenix's lifespan got tied to astronomical cycles, like the cosmic great year, which is a massive astronomical cycle of about 25,800 years caused by Earth's actual position and is divided into 12 astrological ages that are roughly 2,150 years each. Yeah, I have no idea what half of the things I just said even mean. Listen, I also just googled cosmic great year, okay? The point is, they extended the phoenix's lifespan a lot. Like, by an absurd amount. Roman writers, such as Tacitus, also presented phoenix appearances, in specific consular years, as a symbol of imperial renewal and legitimacy. In other words, the bird is now also a politician. No, joke aside, the phoenix was turned into an official emblem of state power, instead of just a mythic oddity. Which means that if the phoenix was associated with fire, and became an emblem of state power, You could say that means the phoenix was the fire emblem of the Roman Empire. And yes, I do think that is funny. So let's go over some misconceptions to finish this video. The phoenix is not purely Egyptian, but also not quite an original idea of Greek or Roman writers. There are some overlapping aspects between Bennu and the phoenix, but they are not identical. If anything, the phoenix was somewhat inspired by Bennu. It is similar with the idea of self-immolation and ashes. These are later additions and transformations of the earlier rebirth imagery. And Herodotus did not just repeat priestly doctrine. Although he was criticized for adding legends and fanciful accounts to his historical report, he met the phoenix story with quite some skepticism, and modern work suggests that part of his story drew on popular songs and visual motifs. And that's it, the timeline of the phoenix for the stories that inspired it to the mortal being we know today. Now, my dear apprentices, what do you think about the phoenix? Were you surprised by its early depictions? Personally, while I do think the old version is interesting, I still like the modern depictions more. Of course, I'm legally required to despise every being that represents the element of fire in any shape or form, but its immortality, especially the way it works, is quite fascinating. Being reborn after a long life is certainly better than just constantly getting older forever. Also, unsurprisingly for a bird, the voice of the phoenix and its singing is way better than I could ever hope to be. But what do you think of the different depictions? Do you like the phoenix of today and dislike the old version, or vice versa? Or perhaps you don't like the phoenix in general? Let me know your opinion, and also if there's any mythical being, myth, legend, etc. you want me to go into next. With that, you are dismissed. See you next lecture.